Greetings, programmers. Busted Thumbs back for episode 8 of our Music Player Studio. Okay, uh, when we last left off, we had a shorter broadcast and we got to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That's what we have inside of our music player right now. It's reading it from data, which is great, and that data is set up inside of our Twinkle Twinkle Little Star sprite, and that copies over that data over to the global data that we have, the music for instrument 1, 2, 3, and 4. A couple of things we haven't done here. We haven't set things like the tempo that we need it to be on, or the default volume, or things like that. There are a few things other than just the music notes themselves that it's like data, but it's not per note data. It's data about the whole song that we have. So I think it would be a good idea for us to make some variables that have to do with that. So these are going to be global variables. They're for all sprites. For instance, we might want to know the current, well, let's just keep the current out, music and name. That will be, in this one, it'll be Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. We need to know beats per minute. Since that's what our sound needs, we need to be able to set the instrument, the beats per minute, which is the tempo, and we also need to be able to send the instruments for each of the instruments, right? Which instrument value it is. Okay. So since beats per minute is called tempo, let's just rename this tempo. That's because that's what Scratch calls it. But it really is in beats per minute. And then this should probably actually be a list. We should make a list which is the instruments for all sprites. And that list will have what instruments we think should be played. Okay. When we're copying over the music, that's when we need to do all this stuff. So here we're copying over the data itself, but let's go ahead and set some of this other stuff. So after we clear the current music, let's go ahead and set the music name to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And then we'll go ahead and set the tempo. Let's make it 80 beats per minute, just to change it up, be a little bit faster. We didn't do volume. Let's make sure we put volume. Let's go ahead and set the volume because that's one of the things that Scratch lets us do. And I believe in sound it's a percentage, so we're going to go ahead and leave that at 100. Then we don't need those things to show up there. Then the last thing we want to do is we want to say what instruments we want to play. In order to do that, we can go ahead and clear the existing instruments. And we need to add in two, because we're only using 2 instruments here. So there are 2 instruments we need to use. 1, 2. And we'll just go ahead and make these both the piano, which is 1. All right, so now we've set up kind of some of the global data. We don't need to show that instruments there. It means once we've copied over the music and the player's about to play it, it should respect those things. But before we get to that, I want to change things up a little bit. I told you that I did this in kind of the simple way before. I don't want there just to be one music player. I want there to be as many music players as is necessary. And that means we're going to need a bunch of clones of music player. And music player is going to keep track of what instrument that it is supposed to be working against, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and which line of the list inside the music for instrument 1, because it could have many lines. We're going to have a different sprite for every one of those scripts. In order to keep track of these things, then, we're going to need to keep track of who we are. And in this case, I'm going to need to know my instrument index and my instrument list index. My instrument index is going to tell me which one of these instruments are 1, 2, 3, or 4, and my list index is going to tell me what line I need to be on inside of each of those. Okay. So when we receive initialized variables, we need to set both of those things that are our original clone, not that the guy who isn't a clone really, needs to go to 1 and 1. So he's going to be working on instrument 1, and he's going to be working on the first line inside of instrument 1. Okay, and until we actually play the music, we don't know which instrument we're going to be working on. But it does mean that all of this stuff is wrong that we've done here. When that new music is loaded, its job isn't necessarily going to be to make sure that there are 4 things that are all set up correctly, but rather just to set up how many clones it needs, and then they can set up what they need to do correctly. So what we need to do instead here is just go ahead. All this is going to be wrong too, so we don't need these anymore. I'm going to delete all of these guys. Okay. And now, because I don't need it in a list anymore, because we're going to have different clones for each one of those. We just need one variable, which is to say the music reading index for this particular sprite. And when we're going to get all started all over again here, that's when new music is loaded, we're going to set our music reading index to 0, and all of these can now go away. Okay, all of these. Don't need any of those guys anymore. And that means that this stuff down here is wrong as well, but we'll get to fixing that up in just a minute. Now, how many clones do we need? That's what we need to do first. First of all, the very first thing we actually should do when we load this is make sure that we've gotten rid of all of our other clones. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say that if 2 things are true, if, let's get rid of that, my instrument index and my instrument list index is equal to 1, then it's my job to clean up all the clones. So really, I guess really what I need to do is I need to delete this clone if it's not one of those things. So really what I want is if I'm not the original guy, then delete this clone. And I think actually because Scratch doesn't allow you to delete the original clone, you probably don't need this, but I want to make it clear what's going on here. Plus the fact that there's no way to snap underneath and delete this clone. So we kind of need this kind of separated into its own if block anyways. Okay, I'm going to set my reading index to 0, and now I'm going to start creating the clones that I need to work with. Okay, so the clones we need is for every instrument that has music in it, and for every item inside of the list that has music in it, we need to create a clone. Okay, so let's look to do it for each one of those lists. So I'm going to repeat for the length of music instrument 1, and that's how many list items are inside of it. I'm going to go ahead and create a clone of myself. Now, the one area we need to be a little bit careful of is that we don't want to do this for this particular clone. We only want to do this if the length, we don't want to do it for the first item, because I'm already tracking the first item, basically is what I'm trying to say. So this guy only needs to create for those other ones. In order to keep track of that, we're probably going to want to keep track of an index. We're going to need an index anyways as we do work here. So I do this for most sprites. I create an index. Okay. And I'm going to, before we get into this, I'm going to go ahead and set that index to 0. And when I get in here, I'm going to change that index by 1. And that just means that I'm going to know where I am in my repeat. And basically, in this case, if I only want to create the clone of myself if index is greater than 1. Okay. This has gotten in the way of our music player, but this music player is actually pretty wrong now. So is this read to value, but we'll go and clean them all up in a little bit. All right, now we need to do that for all of them. Not repeat until, we want to repeat for the length. We'll go ahead and set the index again. And we're going to repeat for the length, this time of the second. Oops, that goes there, goes there. And we're going to create a clone again. And we need to do that a bunch of times. So we need to do that for each of the instruments. And actually, we should be doing that here. The one thing that we haven't done here is given any way for the clone to know which instrument it should be looking at. So let's go ahead and create a little another variable. I'll just call it clone instrument index. And here we're going to set the clone instrument index to 1. Here we're going to set it to 2. Here we're going to set it to 3. And here we're going to set it to 4. Now the reason this is important is that we need to now have the little logics for keeping track of who we are. We need to make sure that when we create a clone, it knows how to set itself up. So what it should do is it should set that its instrument index, my instrument index, and it looks like I did one of these wrong. I made that one global. So let me delete it. And bring it back again. But local. Good. Okay. So my instrument index should be the clone instrument index. And my instrument list index is going to be this index that's come through here. Remember, that index just got copied over when we were working with it. Okay. So now these clones, these guys should all know their identification, what they're working with. They should know which list they're working with for the music, and they should know which item inside that list that they're working with. That's what those two things do. So now that when the music's loaded, we've created all of our clones. That's the first bit. And maybe we should even make that explicit. I like adding blocks because it lets me know later on what it was I've been doing. So making music player clones is what I've been doing ever since right there. There we go. Okay, so we've got those clones up and running, and they're ready to go. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to work on their ability to play music from the right sources. Now this doesn't work the way it's set up right now because we're still using music index 1 and the like over here. We'll get that all fixed up in our next session, but we've run out of time for now. And as soon as we get through that next section, I think we should be able to play the music again. And this time we'll probably be able to play more than one, both the melody and the accompaniment when we get through our next one and all the clones are doing what they're supposed to. All right, sound good? I will see you on the other side. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.